legally we are not a bargaining agent for the retirees, but our tradition has been to try and win something for the retirees when we go into bargaining. The challenge that we face this time is simple, pure, hard math of the changing demographic balance in General Motors population. As we all know, the population of active workers at GM has been downsized dramatically. The workforce is getting older. The population of retirees is growing. And this creates some incredible funding challenges that we all have to be aware of in terms of that tradition. I want to show you how the balance between active workers and retirees at General Motors has changed over the last couple of decades. Let's go back to 1996. We had about 23,000 actives, that's the red bar, and about 17,500 retirees. So we were still able to use our bargaining power with the active workers to negotiate something for the retirees on an ad hoc basis, as had been our culture. As we went forward, the number of active workers declined and the number of retirees grew. In fact, around the turn of the century, the two crossed. So by the turn of the century, there are now more retirees than active, but we still had the ability to negotiate some adjustments, like the peak COLA adjustments that were ad hoc negotiated each round, and other benefits for the retirees. However, as we entered the economic crisis in 2008, we lost several plants. Remember, we've lost 4 major operations from General Motors since the turn of the century. The St. Therese plant in Quebec, the diesel operations in London, the Windsor transmission plant, and then, of course, most painfully, the Oshawa truck plant. So the number of actives has really declined dramatically, while the number of retirees has grown, of course, partly because we were able to negotiate early retirements as part of the restructuring. Here's where we ended up in 2012. 5,700 actives, that's the little red bar at the bottom, 32,000 retirees. So there's now about 6 retirees for each and every active worker that's still working at General Motors. So what this means in pure hard math, anything that we negotiated for a retired worker as part of our bargaining, you'd have to multiply it by 6, and that's the amount of money for each active worker that we were trying to bargain for the retirees. And the simple math of that is unbelievable. First of all, we have to remember that GM faces some incredible pension obligations moving forward. Just to preserve the current pension plan and the current benefit that's embodied in our contract, GM is required under the special regulation that the province passed in 2009 to pay $162 million a year into its hourly plan until 2015. It will probably have to pay more than that each year after 2015, depending on what happens with the interest rates and the investment returns and the solvency deficit in the plan, potentially hundreds of millions of dollars after that. This year's payments alone, $162 million, is the equivalent of $15 per hour on the active labor force. This is an enormous funding obligation that General Motors faces just to keep the security of the current pension benefit, keeping in mind the government helped GM with a special one-time payment of over $3 billion. That's incredible when you think about it. Look at what's happening to retirees across Canada, and if we were able to get the Ontario and federal governments to earmark funds to go into our pension fund, that much money, that was incredible. So this is already, even before we sit down at the bargaining table, GM is going to be paying $15 an hour in hard cash just to maintain their obligations to the pension fund, and that number could grow. Now, despite that, your bargaining committee at GM, and the same was true at Ford, wanted to negotiate something for the retirees. We were prevented by law, by that provincial regulation, from negotiating anything that added to GM's pension liabilities until that special regulation expires in 2015. So we couldn't negotiate something in the pension plan. We could do something like a lump sum for retirees or some other kind of gesture, as Chris mentioned. Imagine what that would cost, though. Think of an idea, say if we negotiate $1,000 a year lump sum for the retirees, with 6 retirees for each active. Now that means we'd be asking GM to pay out $128 million in lump sum bonuses for the retirees, which is the equivalent over the 4 years of the contract of $3 an hour. So in an environment where we're fighting just to hold on to our wage, okay, there's no base wage increases and COLA is suspended, to think that we could grab $3 an hour and transform that into lump sums for the retirees just was not in the cards. Your people kept it on the table until the very end, and the one thing that we can be proud of is the fight that we've had together, actives and retirees together, to preserve the integrity of our pension fund, despite the enormous costs that it's imposing on General Motors. So in terms of our overall strategy, I think we have a lot to be proud of today. Number one, we did resist that shopping list of concessions. Number two, we've won some recognition for our members for the sacrifices they made in '09 and for the hard, productive labor that they perform every day that has been essential to this company turning around. But we've done it in a way that positions ourselves for future investments by controlling fixed costs and making it more attractive to hire new workers in Canada. So in that regard, I think we can be very proud. I do want to say just a couple of words about the need, as Chris mentioned in the introduction, to continue debating the idea of an industrial strategy for our auto industry in Canada moving forward. And this was the idea behind our whole policy document this spring, the town hall meetings that we had in all auto communities, including Oshawa. We are in a critical juncture in Canada. We've survived the meltdown. We have a lot going for our industry, but we cannot, on the C.A.W. side, single-handedly save the auto industry with what we do at the bargaining table. We've been very, I think, mature and very sophisticated in how we negotiated this contract to enhance the case for investing in Canada, but the union alone can't do that. We need government there with an active industrial strategy to make sure that our industry is here in the future, a national auto policy. And our document that we distributed this spring is available on our website. I do encourage everyone to look at our 10-point strategy. The 10 ideas that we have there are all ideas that are actually in place in other countries in the world. This is not a utopian wish list. These are things that other countries like Korea, like Brazil, like Germany, like China, even like America are doing today, where their governments are using the power of government and the power of policy to enhance investments in their domestic industries, and not just leaving it to chance and not leaving it up to the workers to try and do that by joining a race to the bottom that we can't win. So again, the fight for a national auto policy is there, and one that we have to take on every day of the year, not just during collective bargaining. So with that, I thank you very much for your attention. I recommend the agreement for ratification, and I will now pass it over to my colleague, Joanne Hanna, to walk through the compensation features of the tentative agreement. Thank you very much for your attention and what you do every day.